This is the Kokomo Post Podcast. This is your number one source for all things Kokomo.
Hey everybody, my name is Pam Downing and this is Erin Larison, and we are your new hosts of the Kokomo Post Podcast. And listen, I just want to stop here for a minute and say I could not be more excited to relaunch this podcast and relaunch it with you, Erin. If you are a listener, hi David Hunt. If you are a listener to the Kokomo Post Podcast, I may be familiar to you, but I cannot wait to bring Erin alongside as a co-host and as an incredible voice in this conversation as we explore and meet and get to know leaders in our community, or people who are in the background of our community who are doing what they do in their world to make our community a better place. So Erin, so glad you're here.
I'm excited to be here. So when I first came to the team of the Kokomo Post, I sat in on sort of the first version of the Kokomo Post podcast, and it was really fun, and it was full of energy, and it was full of life. And we, through some strategic discussions, really started talking about, how can we continue to add value to the conversation in Kokomo?
Yeah.
And, we have sort of built this organization around an idea that we say we're making positivity louder.
Right.
And we've had so many conversations about that because I think it's really easy for that phrase to come off as a really cheap platitude.
Sure.
And there are a few things, honestly, that sort of, I hate hearing that because I can hear how that would come off as something that's about an inch deep. But for me, and I know for you and for the people who are working here, what I deeply believe we're working for at the Kokomo Post is to continue to lift up and celebrate people who are making the kind of community that we want to live in.
Yeah.
Right. And there's hard work in that. There's struggle. And it's not to say that, hey, everything's great.
Yeah. Right.
We internally, when we sort of hear that, we say like, that is us being rainbow puking unicorns, right?
Yeah.
Like we are not here to just say everything's amazing, but we are here to say that there are great, even in the midst of some times when it's hard, when stuff can suck, there are still really, really beautiful stories, and there are really beautiful, incredible things that are happening. And I want to lift those up, and I want to celebrate them, and I want to learn from them so that we can all get better together. And so that's what I really want to do in this podcast with you, and with leaders around Kokomo who are doing this work, and I think who deserve to be celebrated.
Yeah, so I think learning is really what we're here for, learning from each other, learning more about our community, learning more about kind of what makes people's heartbeats faster. We will be talking to people from so many different parts of Kokomo, and I'm really excited. So if you are a returning listener of the podcast, welcome back. This format will be a little different. We're so glad you're here. If you're a new listener to the podcast, welcome. We are so glad you're here. And you'll notice Erin and I aren't here alone. I'm super excited to welcome Austin Marisay, the director of Kokomo Pride. So Austin, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit, what is Kokomo Pride? Let me start there.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Erin and I have been talking on Facebook, and I'm just really excited to help you guys launch and to be involved in this. It really means a lot. So to answer your question, Kokomo Pride, very simply put, in academic speak almost, we're a nonprofit in the state of Indiana. We're waiting on our federal designation as nonprofit.
Okay.
As anybody who's worked with the federal government knows, it works at a snail's pace.
Sure.
So we're still working on it. No, I know. Believe it or not, even the state of Indiana is slow, but federal is slower. We're still working on that, but we are designated and recognized as a nonprofit in the state of Indiana.
Okay.
So that's a very big plus, and it gives us a lot of options and benefits.
Okay.
For example, we can write state grants. We're still waiting on, and some local and federal grants don't necessarily require federal designation.
Okay.
Most of them would, but there are some grants that we don't need a federal designation as nonprofit. We can just do it strictly for the state.
Okay. Well, tell us more about Kokomo Pride. Why do you exist? What do you do? let's start there.
So what do we do is easy and complicated all at the same time. Okay. What we do simply is we advocate for the LGBTQ plus community here in Kokomo and Howard County. Make it more complex, we advocate for the LGBTQ plus community here in Kokomo and Howard County. That is a very broad, broad concept, and it encompasses so much, all the way from advocating and just giving us a queer space to exist, like at our drag shows, hopeful eventual community center, things like that, or talking with the mayor should there be legislation that's put forward that is anti-LGBTQ, working with the mayor, with previous mayors, and this is before I took over, but working with administration to get the human rights ordinance passed, certain things like that. And then just being an open, welcoming queer voice in Kokomo, you might be surprised at just how much that means to queer folks, just to see people up here talking about it openly and welcomingly. Even if we're not saying anything new, we're just openly talking about it, especially in a town that's as conservative as Kokomo can be.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you're tiptoeing into one of our future questions, but here's a big question for you. How is Kokomo Pride making our community a better space? And you already kind of answered that, but I'd love to hear you talk more.
So all spaces are better when every voice is heard. Yeah. Not necessarily every voice has to be agreed upon, but all voices have to be heard one way or another. When you listen to just one segment of any population, you're inherently negating the existence of others. If we only listen to straight voices, we're negating the voices of LGBTQ plus people. If we're only listening to white voices, we're ignoring the voices of black and brown and people of color, and just about anywhere down the line. So if you want to look at it just simply, we are bringing the LGBTQ plus voice to the table. And we've gotten some pushback from that. People are of the opinion that, well, you're just humans. Why do you have to make everything about what you do in bed and all that? But it's also an education that being gay and being queer is not just what we do in bed and in our bedroom. There is so much more to that. There's so much more to our culture that is not around in heterosexual culture. The fact that we had to fight for our rights, and that back in 1969, it was strictly illegal for gay folks to gather in one space. The police and law enforcement saw that as an unlawful gathering. That's why Stonewall existed. Partially why Stonewall existed.
Wow.
Man. Well, and I'll say, I mean, for me, and I think I told you this already, like when we started reimagining what we were going to do with the Kokomo Post podcast, and I didn't know you at all at the time. I mean, I knew who you were because it's Kokomo, right? And like everyone knows everyone of somehow. Everyone else. Right. But like I saw him in a thing, and I think he's friends with somebody and somebody. And I mean, I don't even know if I had messaged you at that point. I think I just walked up to you on the street and I was like, "Hi, Austin, I'm Erin, and I need you to come on the podcast. And you're just a person that I need to know because I've been so captivated with sort of what Kokomo Pride has been doing." And I think the first time it was like a Haynes Apperson parade, like several years ago, that just out of nowhere, it was like, wait, we have a Kokomo Pride? I didn't even know that. And it was like and I think it was still relatively new at this point. So tell me if I'm totally wrong, but it was relatively new at this point. And I was excited and sort of amazed and just sort of inspired by the first thing that I publicly saw you do was not just like, there wasn't a coffee house meeting or something. It was like, we are leading the Haynes Apperson parade. And I don't know. I mean, sort of that sort of moxie and that spirit I have loved watching. And anyway, so all that is to say, when we started talking about this, I was like, nope, Austin is going to, I have to know more. Right. I have to have him on the show.
No, I wish I could take credit for that, though. When I'm in charge, we haven't done a parade yet. We were going to do the holiday parade, but COVID shut that down, and that was not a good thing. But previous leadership did a good job of getting the word out, and they did a great job doing that and getting the following, they just got tired. Ultimately, is what ended up happening, because it can be exhausting. It can absolutely be exhausting. My fiance has to yell at me almost every night to come to bed, because I can be up working on things almost day in and day out.
Sure.
Yeah.
The thing that I've been able to do is delegate. I have a board. I listen to my board. My board helps me make decisions and helps me do things. I can tell them, hey, go out and do things. I can leave my youth group director, just say, hey, get some volunteers, get some events going, get some meetings going, and she'll go out and do it. My director of adult outreach, she's started working on some social groups. Currently, we have 3 going on for 55 and better, transgender folks, and parents of LGBTQ plus youth.
Wow.
We're working on getting some regular meetings at places around town, and she just got the ball rolling with that. She came up with the idea and started planning it and making it happen. Has reached out to business owners, has reached out to other places to host. It's going to be very informal, like just come in, buy yourself a cup of coffee and a pastry. We had one not long ago at Petite Patisserie, where everybody came in, bought their donut or bought their croissant and their coffee, and just sat around and talked.
Very cool.
Ashley was only able to stay there for an hour, but the people who came stayed there for 2.5.
Wow.
Just sitting there and talking. After the official event ended, they still hung out for 2.5 hours.
Love
so
that
right there is why we're making Kokomo better. We are helping build our community, assisting local businesses too, locally owned businesses. And ultimately, Kokomo Pride, yes, we're here for the LGBTQ plus community in Kokomo, but we're also here for Kokomo as a whole. If the city of Kokomo is not doing well, obviously Kokomo Pride is not going to do well. If Kokomo Pride is the only thing succeeding in Kokomo, we're not going to actually be the only thing succeeding. So we definitely still have to be out there and helping our own town. Even if it's not strictly an LGBTQ plus topic or conversation, we still might be involved with it. Like we talked about doing the Haynes-Apperson Festival. We just can't make it work this year for scheduling conflicts, because every single one of us works a full-time job on top of running Kokomo Pride.
Yeah.
And we just can't make that happen this year. But the point being is that we are still here for the entire community, not just the queer community.
So, like I said, I kind of reached out to you, and I didn't know you at all, and I still don't know you well. So, I want to know everything. Where are you from? How did you get here? How did you get to Kokomo? We talked a little bit off camera about that, but I kind of want to know, what's your story?
Sure. So, I was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio, which is in the northwest, about 10, 15 minutes from the Michigan border. So I was born and raised there, went to high school. Then once I graduated high school, I moved to Northeast Ohio to go to school at Kent State University.
Okay.
At Kent State, I majored in photojournalism, where I got really involved with the LGBTQ plus center on campus. At the time, it was the LGBTQ plus Student Center, so it was a big, long acronym. Now they've shortened it after I left. Long story long there. But I got really involved there, got really involved in advocacy, got my degree in photojournalism. So with being a journalist, I had to try, it didn't work very well, try to keep my political opinions and all that out of my reporting and out of my social media. It got to the point where I just couldn't do that. I realized journalism wasn't for me as much, so I ended up going more into the marketing side of everything. So then after I graduated in 2019, I got a job up in South Central Michigan at a camp called Greenwoods Camp. It is actually on my hand. My hand's the state of Michigan. Each dot is a city on my hand. Each dot is a city that's important to my family and I in Michigan, because my mom's side of the family was born and raised in Michigan. I'm an honorary Michigander.
Love it.
And it's one of those. So it's
cool.
One of my 13 tattoos that I know absolutely nobody on the face of the planet will ever have again.
So show us, where is Camp Greenwood?
So Greenwoods is over here. It's in a little town called Decatur. It's spelled exactly the same way as Decatur, Indiana, but it's not Decatur, Indiana. It's Decatur, Michigan. It's kind of a joke that when camp comes into place, the population of Decatur doubles, because it's such a small town. So I got a job there, fell in love with the marketing, and kept falling in love with photography and all that. Met some amazing friends. It was by far and away the best summer job I've ever had. Cool. So then I left there and came down to IU Kokomo, where I got hired as the photographer. And then during the pandemic, I got laid off. And then I was working at another job at some point just to make ends meet for the time being. Now I'm working at Bonavista. But my involvement with Kokomo Pride was while I was at IUK, the director of alumni relations, that's his position. The director of alumni relations introduced me to Kokomo Pride Youth Group.
Okay.
Because at the time, this was in maybe October of 2019.
Okay.
At the time, Kokomo Pride Youth Group was the only surviving and only remaining facet of, or active facet of Kokomo Pride.
Okay.
Because the other group, the president and vice president, had to step back. They were getting tired. They didn't do the best job at delegating work out to people, so they just had to go on an official hiatus.
Okay.
That's what they were calling it. So I got involved in the youth group. And then Paul Novak, the director of the youth group at the time, was also tired, getting ready to step out. So I said, I'll step in, take over your role if you train me in the role for a couple of months.
Smart.
Yeah.
So
Smart.
we became the co-directors of the youth group. And this all happened I met Paul in October. This probably happened around mid to late November.
Okay.
And then around January, we had a conversation where we felt like it was time to restart the adult group, because the way Kokomo Pride was organized at one point, it was the youth group, adult group, separate but under the same name, right? So Kokomo Pride Youth Group and adult group was separated under the same name, two different organizations, two different facets, very separate but combined at the same time. So we started that back up. Then Paul and I got together and decided, you know what, this doesn't make much sense to have two separate organizations with two separate, the same name, but separate like relations, separate bank accounts, all that. So why don't we just restart Kokomo Pride as a whole and make Kokomo Pride the parent organization or the umbrella group, right?
Yeah.
And then make the youth group one of the main facets of Kokomo Pride, so one of the products of it. So then in February of 2020, first of all, worst time ever to start a company. Like, don't get me wrong, worst time ever. Would have never known that, but it was.
Well, sure, yeah.
So
Hey, guess when we started the Kokomo Post?
Turns out we're 1 month older than you.
wow, January 2020. You guys are doing pretty well too. So yeah, in February 2020, we officially rebranded as Kokomo Pride, and then Kokomo Pride Youth Group was a product of Kokomo Pride.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was our only product because we had just restarted. So we got that rolling, and then we brought on new board members, expanded. Currently, we currently have, what is it, 5 positions? Yes, we currently have myself as the director, Dorian Sybre is the assistant director. I have Carissa, I always butcher her last name, but Van Deventer as the director of education. We have Ashley Hatfield as our director of adult outreach, and then we have Christine Black Benson as our director of youth outreach, ultimately taking over the youth group. When Paul stepped out at the beginning of the year, because it was just time for him to make his departure, he stepped out on great terms, still a great friend of mine. I got an email from him just this morning. He's still a great friend.
Yeah.
But, so Christine takes over the youth group. So currently we have 5 members of the board and a treasurer as a third party to make sure, because as a nonprofit, we have to make sure that we're handling money appropriately.
Yep.
Right.
So we have our treasurer who's not officially on the board, but is at board meetings anytime money is discussed. And so we actually have one official open position and one coming up soon. We do have our director of community relations, which is going to be involved with updating and maintaining our LGBTQ plus friendly list. That list currently has 3 different criteria on it. We have LGBTQ plus friendly businesses, faith organizations, and mental health professionals.
Oh, right on.
So we as a board have created a list of criteria for all of those facets.
Oh, cool.
And
So, for example, what would that be?
Like what the criteria are?
Yeah.
I can pull it up online, but I don't have them necessarily memorized. But for businesses, I think it's 7 criteria, not an 8 if you offer full-time benefits to your employees. So some of the questions on the criteria would be like, are your restrooms gender neutral? So if they're single use, do they just have a restroom sign, or do you have a single use men's and a single use women's restroom? Because if they're single use, why do they have to be gendered? It doesn't make any sense. You close and lock the door, you're the only one in there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or if you don't have single-use restrooms, you have a policy in place that anybody can use the restroom that they identify with or that they feel most welcome and comfortable in. Same thing with uniforms. Are your uniforms either gender neutral, or are you able to? Oh, there you go. She pulled them up. So, like the first one is sexual orientation expressly included in your non-discrimination hiring policies. Then we go into is gender identity expressly included included? Are your uniforms gender neutral, or do you allow employees to wear whichever uniform they feel most comfortable? So if you do require different fits, different cuts of shirt or whatever it might be.
Oh, okay,
then,
sure, I'm with you now.
If I'm a trans woman assigned male at birth, transitioning to women, would you then allow me to wear the female uniform?
Yeah.
Another one is, again, the restrooms thing. Then do you participate in the LGBTQ plus community? Do you take advantage of Kokomo Pride's education efforts, or are you willing to take advantage of those? And then do you market to the LGBTQ plus community? And then the eighth one is only if you offer full-time benefits. Do your benefits support same-sex couples in the exact same way they do straight couples?
Okay. Yeah.
Now,
So
do you guys do any sort of coaching and mentoring of businesses to help them? Because I would assume, I would guess, and maybe this is faulty, but I would guess there are lots of businesses in Kokomo who just don't quite know where to start, or have not walked through on an HR level.
Sure.
Layering in and building into sort of their, into their HR practices.
Sure.
The idea of inclusion in all of these ways. So do you guys do any sort of mentoring with them?
So officially, no, but unofficially, if you email me, I'd be happy to sit down with an HR representative or with somebody and go over these. And maybe if you don't qualify, because we do allow 2 no's.
Okay.
So you don't have to necessarily hit every single one, because we understand we're in Kokomo. Not every business that is going to be LGBTQ plus friendly may market to LGBTQ plus people. They may not put rainbows out on their windows or something like that, and they may not have the ability to have gender neutral restrooms for whatever reason, right?
Sure.
So we're not. It doesn't have to be 100%.
Yeah.
But we are in the process of creating a diversity training. For community-based diversity training, we have safe zone training, right? That's a very common thing in universities and higher education. So Kokomo Pride is in the process of working with actually both educational institutions in town. We are working with Ivy Tech and IU Kokomo, representatives from each. And we're also working with Father Richard at St. Andrew's Episcopal. We were working with a couple of other community leaders on a task force to create this diversity training program that's going to help people understand why LGBTQ plus is so important, and why it's important to have pride, and why it's important for people to have inclusive speech, because it is so important. It's super easy to do. We do it every day, but then when it's brought up, people then revert back to homophobic or transphobic comments, but they don't realize that they're doing it every day.
Sure.
Like they, them pronouns. We use it every single day. We just don't notice it because it's so ingrained in our vernacular. But people, anytime somebody says I use they, them pronouns, people get mean, and they are just like, no, they, them is plural, blah 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 blah. Like,
Suddenly they're grammarians.
Even though they may have just said, oh, that person, where's the person who owns that wall? I wonder if they know where it is.
Yeah.
Sure.
They did that 5 minutes ago, but then they get really upset when somebody says they use they, them pronouns.
So this diversity task force, the education is really the mission for that.
Of that one, yes.
And that's a multi-organization effort.
Sure. Yeah.
Very cool.
We're working with, again, both representatives from Ivy Tech and IU Kokomo, some local businesses in town, faith organizations.
Cool.
That way it's a very well-rounded thing.
Sure.
So then somebody who would want to come back and say it's against our religion, well, I'm sorry, we had a religious official on our task force when we were putting this together. So if you think that, that's fine, but please talk to this person. Please talk to this pastor or priest at St. Andrew's Episcopal who actually knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And that is going to be rolled out at some point to not only businesses, but also individuals, government officials, offices, businesses. What was the other ones? Doctors, like medical professionals, educational institutions, and all those. So basically anybody who wants this to be generic enough yet specific enough, and we can make it specific enough to still be beneficial to just about anyone.
What a tangible you sort of called them your products, right? I mean, like, is that as a product that's such a tangible way that you are serving and helping grow and helping educate? That's really cool.
Yeah, we're really excited for it. Awesome. We have pulled a lot of inspiration from the Safe Zone training. We're going to do a lot of different things, like if a business goes through our diversity training, and we haven't quite figured out the right terminology. I don't like the word diversity training because people inherently are like, I don't need a diversity training. Get that away from me. So it's a PR thing too. So if you call it diversity training, people who are already not open to that concept are just going to completely shy away. Yeah. But then if you call it something else, they might be willing to still come in and do your training and listen.
Austin, I'd love, you've shared already a lot of your experience in running an organization that promotes inclusivity. I'd love to hear you talk more about that. And maybe, we talked about this at the beginning, kind of there's this dualistic, like, I'd love to hear some of the epic wins that you've seen, or some cool, like, highlight reel moments. And then I don't want to camp here, but I say that also acknowledging that I'm sure you've faced some challenges in your short time. Well, not a short time. You're coming up on 2 years now.
A year and a half about, yeah.
Year and a half involved.
Yep.
But as the director, as the leader, talk to us about those things. And this is where, it's complex. I can't wait to hear kind of the highlight moments. But at the same time, acknowledge that, I can imagine, especially with the layer of COVID added, some of the complexities and the challenges.
So needless to say, applying for nonprofit status was complicated and problematic, especially when we couldn't meet in person, and based on everybody's schedules for a point in time, we were only meeting as a board for 1 hour every month, period.
Sure. That
was it. 1 hour a month. So we were doing other things outside of that hour, but not as a whole board. Sure. So we couldn't actually write our bylaws together. So that was a challenge.
Yeah.
Needless to say. Now, one of the big triumphs, I have two that come to mind. One of them is very, very simple. Long story short, I was in the ER not too long ago from an issue. Not a big deal. Everything's fine. But while I was sitting there, I saw somebody else waiting in the waiting room who had one of Kokomo Pride's stickers on the back of their phone. I had never met this person before. I don't think I gave them the sticker. I genuinely don't know. It had our little duck sticker that says we're all a little queer around here. And it just made me like beam with pride. It's like, I have no idea who this is. I've never met them before, but they're carrying our product around.
Yeah.
They are doing great things. And we are doing great things. So that was one of those small little things. But then
how cool.
A big triumph is we obviously got that nonprofit status in the state of Indiana.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing.
It is.
Huge thing. And on top of that, our drag queen car wash this year, it was our second annual. We got Stellantis to step in as our presenting partner. We had a dozen or so other partners that joined in at this particular event. And then day of the event, we were able to double what the queens walked home with at the event.
Really?
We had I think almost double the amount of queens. But we were also then able to double what they took home in cash.
Wow.
And we still then raised 6 times the amount of money that we did last year.
Wow.
6 times from both partnerships and people joining.
Okay.
But it was an incredible thing.
6 times.
Yeah.
We're going to have to check back with you in June of 2022. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, June of 2022, we are hoping to outgrow Kokomo Municipal Stadium.
Okay.
We're hoping to be bigger than what the stadium can hold.
Yeah.
We're hoping to do something maybe a little bit smaller than the Strawberry Festival, but the kind of concept where we shut down a street somewhere and have a street festival.
Very neat.
Still keep the car wash in some way, shape, or form, because that's what we started with last year. We started with our drag queen car wash. It went over well last year too, but then this year was bigger. Next year it's going to be biggest yet.
Very cool.
That's crazy.
Very cool.
Wow. Just to see that growth. I mean, yeah. Well, and I think, I think I saw you posted something not too long ago, this last week, that, you've sort of heard some criticism, and I think someone called, I think you said, like, somebody called your nonprofit stupid, right? And boy, that hurts. As somebody who I've worked nonprofit, and man, nonprofit people who love their nonprofit, like you said, it's blood, sweat, and tears for the thing that you care about. It's low or no pay. But you're doing it.
No pay right now.
Yeah.
None whatsoever.
And I can tell just in this conversation and in the little bit we've talked before this, this is a heart project on such a huge level for you, right? So how do you keep walking forward? What do you do when you're met with sort of that resistance, when you're met with your nonprofit is stupid, or I'm certain that your nonprofit is stupid is not the worst you've heard.
No, it's not. We've heard people say how dare you even have the audacity to exist, things like that. Like don't take your kids to these events. Don't do things like this. Don't support this at all. We've had criticism from previous membership, or not previous membership, but supporters of previous leadership that have said they'll never support us because we're not giving them commitment or not giving them accolades every single time we get accolades. We're not giving them back to previous leadership. It just doesn't make much sense to me. But nonetheless, how I keep going with that is I just realized that I listen to the good things that people are saying. I listen to the positivity. I try my hardest to be a contagiously positive individual. Out in the public, you'll hardly ever hear me complain about just about anybody. At my apartment with my fiance,
different story.
Very different story. Yeah. But out in public, I intentionally try to surround myself with positive people and like-minded people. I know they're out there. And then I get testimonials on Facebook every now and then of people thanking and appreciating everything that we do. If you look at that particular post that I made, we had 5 or 6 other community leaders from other very successful businesses here in Kokomo that were saying that they see the difference and change that we're making in town already. I don't see it a lot because people always put a face up when I'm around. They always say, oh yeah, Kokomo Pride's great. But then I don't actually see what other people are saying truthfully. So it's really great to hear that from others. Yeah. And I had people from all around the country. If you look at deeply in that post, people who are noticing even outside of Kokomo what we're doing. So it's focusing on the positives and not the negatives. I went into this knowing, being in a town like Kokomo that is rather conservative, we were going to get some pushback. So I prepared myself for that at the very, very beginning. And now I almost expect it. So when it happens, it doesn't really bother me all that much.
Are you familiar with the Enneagram?
Yes.
What's your number?
I don't know. I'm familiar with it. I haven't taken it.
All right,
we'll
I'm just
put it
curious.
Down to the bottom of the screen. We'll find out.
How about this? I'll take it tonight, and then I'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes, I'm interested.
What's your guess?
Either 3 or an 8. I'm guessing.
Yeah, my guess was 3.
I took the Myers-Briggs thing at one point. I think I'm an INTJ. INTJ. Yeah.
I'm an ENFP. So
okay,
we'd only have N's in common. What are you?
I don't remember. I remember hang on, let me look it up. I'm the campaigner.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but honestly, that doesn't mean much to me. I don't know what those letters mean. I just know that it's an ENTJ.
ENTJ. Okay, cool.
Hang on, let me tell you.
If it sounds like we're speaking,
an ENFP.
You are?
Yeah.
Same girl.
Oh man.
All right. ENFPs forever. If this sounds like Greek to you, I'll be sure to add this to the show notes or give some kind of explanation like right here so that you can understand what we're talking about. These are silly. Well, they're not silly. Some people take them very seriously. Yes. These are personality tests, and I just off the cuff, just curious about you and Enneagram because.
Well, and I think that's, sort of that piece of like, hey, I'm going to take the positive and I'm going to let the negative roll off. One, teach me how, because
I'm trying to teach my fiance how. It's hard sometimes.
Right, it is hard. I was in media before, and when I sort of made the decision to come back into the Kokomo Post, my husband said, people are mean.
Yeah.
And just so you know, are you ready for, you'll be criticized. And I was like, I've been in this before. I know what I'm doing. Like, I know. I did, journalism for 15 years. And so I'm fine. And no, people are mean, right?
they absolutely can be very mean.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I was out of it and worked in nonprofit it was a solid 8 years of sort of being out of that. And it's not that the internet didn't exist when I was doing this, but it was different. Right?
It was different. Yeah.
Social media was different. I left the Tribune in 2012, and people were mean then, but not in the way, not with the anonymity, not with some of the things that have just been really sliced through me. And when you're passionate about something, as you are about nonprofit, or as we are about the Post, or about Kokomo, man, it's a hard lesson to learn. So, I mean, truly, tell us more about where do you find that? How do you kind of keep going at the places where you're met with criticism or no's, or surely, I'm sure you're met with hatefulness here. And
honestly, no matter where you go, LGBTQ plus nonprofits and organizations will be met with hatred. They get it in San Francisco, get it in New York City. No matter where you're at, you're going to get met with that. That's just a byproduct of being queer. It just is right now, unfortunately. So the way I get around it is, honestly, I can't really explain it more than I just let it roll off my back. I just really don't let it affect me, because I just know in my heart of hearts that what I'm doing is the right thing. Whenever you're told, just no matter what, do what you think is right, or do what you know is right and face the consequences later, if there are any, I just genuinely believe that what I'm doing is the right thing. The way I am bringing about positivity is the right thing. You'll notice nowhere in any of our posting are we bashing. Are we tearing anybody down? Are we bringing people down because they are bringing us down? That is not what we do. Sure, I will clap back on social media. Like every now and then the Tribune posts an article about us. People get mad that we have the audacity to exist. I have the spoons to deal with that right now. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier of showing people that somebody is out there willing to talk about it, willing to stand up for it. So that's why I clap back. That's why I talk about it. But I never go personal. Ever. I always just bring up, so explain to me in intimate detail why you feel this way. Somebody, when we were advertising for our drag show, that was just last week, they said, don't bring your kids to this event. I asked them just very simply, why do you say that? Please be specific. They couldn't respond. They had no idea what to say, because they expected me to get angry. They expected me to react harshly to it. And that was a very poignant question. Tell me why. Like, please be specific. Why do you want to keep kids away? But I don't ever get nasty. I don't ever get personal with people.
I love hearing you say that. I think that's great leadership. So I want to acknowledge you for that.
Thank you.
And I also think, this is what we're looking for, right? Like, this is making positivity louder, but it's not, it's not this platitude. Yeah. You're right. That's a great question. It's perhaps not an easy one to ask. Apparently it wasn't an easy one to answer either. But there's a way to lead with positivity, with an optimistic, hopeful spirit. Yes. Like you said, because what you're doing is so near and dear to you. It's a heart project. It's a nonprofit at this point, and it matters so much. I'm like that. What you just described, I'm like that hits the nail on the head of like, it doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean it's shallow, but that really is.
Or ignoring the complexity,
right?
That inherently, exists in conflict and in disagreement and in, trying to get people to continue to move forward and hear and be educated, right? I mean, there's so much complexity in that.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
But when we went into this, we weren't asking people to be champions for Kokomo Pride. We never asked them to be as passionate about the LGBTQ plus communities. We were, because we are living these experiences day in and day out. Yeah. So needless to say, we are the most passionate. But we did expect people to kind of get out of our way. To say, we're here, we're queer, and we're going to do what we're going to do, whether you like it or not, really. But we're going to do it in the right way. And we don't need your help. We want it, don't get me wrong, but we don't need it because we already have help from all of these. We have, what was the recent number? 18 official LGBTQ plus businesses here in Kokomo alone.
Okay.
Wow.
2 LGBTQ plus faith organizations, and 2 official LGBTQ plus mental health professionals.
Okay.
So we have the support, we have the background, we have those in our corner.
Okay.
Ultimately, we don't need those who aren't in our corner, but we still welcome everybody in, because the way I view animosity towards the LGBTQ plus community is this: the vast majority of people who are homophobic, transphobic, racist, whatever phobic or ist you want to put in there, simply haven't been exposed to that community in a positive way. There can be a lot of internalized homophobia that people see. So gay folks who don't like other gay folks because all they've seen is the toxic side of it. Every community has a toxic side and a positive side, every single one. So one of the toxic traits that I've seen is what I would call non-ethical non-monogamy. So cheating without your partner being okay with it. Non-monogamy, fine. If you want to go sleep around with whoever you want, as long as your intimate partner is okay with that, all means, go out. But then when you're in a monogamous relationship and sleeping around without that person knowing, that's, to me, is problematic. But if you're only exposed to that side of a community, right?
Sure.
Then that's the only thing you have to frame it on. So obviously you're going to think that's negative. If the only experience you've ever had with a woman, for example, is that she is not a very nice person, is terrible, that's your only experience you've ever had, you're going to think that all women are that way, and with any demographic. So if you've never been exposed to a specific community, my thing is go out and get exposed to that community. Go out and go to a drag show. Go to your local Pride festival. Just see what it's like. Go to your conversations. Watch podcasts or listen to podcasts. Watch documentaries about your community that you're thinking about and trying to understand more. Because I promise you, 9 times out of 10, they're positive. Listen to the song "Most People Are Good." I think it's a Luke Bryan song. It ends up going, "I believe most people are good." I can't remember the lyrics off the top of my head, but it is a good song. Yeah. Because the idea is everybody has their faults, and there are bad people, but the vast majority of people are good.
Well, okay, Austin, you really segued into my next question.
I didn't do that on purpose.
Reading the lyrics, though, y'all, there they are. If we need them, we'll scroll on the bottom.
This is a great song. Yeah.
The lyric that I was looking for is, "I believe most people are good. Most mamas ought to qualify for sainthood. I believe most Friday nights look better under neon lights and under neon or stadium lights." Yeah. That leads into the chorus every single time. So I believe most people are good and most mamas ought to qualify for sainthood. Let's be honest, what better 2 lines can you think of in a song, right?
Yeah. Well, you unintentionally segued. My next question for you is, I'd love something we can kind of wrap our hands around and some good takeaways. What are some practical ways that Erin and I and that Kokomo can create a more inclusive community? Give us some of your best tips and tricks. And this could be big, this could be small.
So first things first that comes to mind, if you're a business owner or a business manager, talk to the owner and see if you can get permission from the owner of your business and look at our LGBTQ plus friendly criteria.
Okay.
That kind of stuff, believe it or not, even though it might sound silly, makes a huge difference. The vast majority of people won't notice your differences, but the people that it matters to will.
Yeah.
The trans people, when they see just a restroom sign above your restroom, they will notice. Your cisgender people, they won't care. The trans people will. Just like if you have a ramp in front of your building and somebody who needs a wheelchair needs to use it, they'll notice. But the vast majority of people who walk into your storefront won't bat an eye. Yeah.
Well, and also, I mean, there's sort of a curb cut effect to that too, right?
There's a what effect? I'm sorry.
A curb cut effect, right? So when we put in wheelchair ramps, right? It also helps others, right? So I also think that there's such value in looking at sort of the inclusivity of your HR practices because, right, we put in the wheelchair ramp and it doesn't just help people with wheelchairs, right? It also helps people who have strollers. It also helps people who have, who are slower moving on their feet. There's additional benefits to looking at all of those practices to see, are they, it's not just inclusion for LGBTQ+, but there's sort of that when we all get better together.
Right. With the ramps, it also helps people who just had a knee replacement surgery.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a hip replacement. They can't bend the same way. They can go up a slight incline, but they can't do the whole big step.
Yeah.
It helps so many other people, and most things that we're looking at help other people too, and it helps your business.
Yeah.
I hate rainbow capitalism where businesses still put out rainbow stuff but then donate to anti-LGBTQ causes or do it just in Pride Month and then say screw off the rest of the year. I hate that. But the gay community is very loyal. If we find a place, we're going to go there, period. So it can also help your business. Don't make it a business decision by any means. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that could then be a byproduct of helping a community in need.
Sure.
Any other like practical takeaways, maybe for the person who's, I don't know, that they're not a business owner, maybe for a stay-at-home parent, or for me and Erin. Well, you are a business owner, but for me, for the average Kokomo citizen, what are things that we can do to make Kokomo better, to make Kokomo more inclusive?
Your opinion is not the only opinion out there. Just keep reminding yourself that if I believe something, I'm more than okay to believe that. Absolutely never going to tell anybody they can't believe that. If I disagree, I'll probably tell you and tell you why, but I'm never going to try to tell you can't believe what you want to believe. So give everybody else that same respect.
Yeah.
If you don't believe a pride organization should exist, or you don't believe that the LGBTQ people should get married, guess what? Every time a gay person proposes to you, you can say no.
Sure.
You can say no.
Yeah.
You could say no if a woman proposes to you. You don't have to get married. No one's forcing that.
Sure.
No one's forcing that on you. And just by putting something out for people to see is not forcing it on anybody either. So you just remember that your opinion is not the only one. It's not the only valid one either.
That's so good. I took a note earlier when you mentioned this. We were talking about kind of how Pride is making Kokomo better, and you said not every voice has to be agreed upon, but every voice needs to be heard.
Right.
And that's such a great reminder. That's such a great reminder.
I mean, I love that. I think the crux of this is how do we get better, and I think those are definitely ways. I mean, I love the idea of going to your business, to your HR manager, and just saying like, hey, have we looked at this and have we thought of this through this lens? Is this a place that many companies' HR practices were drafted 20 years ago? Right. And so we look at them and they're very, they're very male skewed. They're very white male skewed. I mean, there's so many things that do they deserve a second look? Do they deserve a refresh? And how do we start to have those conversations? So I appreciate that for sure. I mean, for us, if we want to know more about Kokomo Pride, where do we go? How do we get involved? How do people find you?
So my direct email is director@kokomopride.lgbt. It's very easy. Okay. I did that intentionally, so that way people can reach out to me. Kokomo Pride is not the Austin Marisay show. It is not the Dorian Cybray show. It is what the community needs, what the community wants. We are listening to the community. That's why we have these social groups that we've put together.
Okay.
Because we've heard from the community there isn't much community. There isn't any place for people to just go and hang out and be queer together. That doesn't exist. There used to be that, but that isn't here anymore. So we've created that. So we're listening to our community. In our diversity training, we're going to have some listening sessions, at least one, maybe two, so we can actually listen to the community and hear what exactly is needed. Where are the issues? What can we address with training? When we were putting together the criteria for our LGBTQ plus friendly mental health professionals, we got mental health professionals and we got people who've sought mental health help together in a focus group at Sun King and asked questions. Just questions like, what kind of mental health do you need, and have you experienced discrimination in Kokomo? And the answer a couple of times was a resounding yes. They had. So there's lots of different things that we are listening to the community on. So long story long, reach out. We want to hear from you. To read more, we do have our website, which is kokomopride.lgbt. Instead of .com, we are one of the first websites in the country to adopt the .lgbt ending.
Okay.
There was also a .gay, but we felt that .lgbt was more inclusive than just a .gay.
Okay.
So we have a Kokomo Pride .lgbt, and then we are on Facebook. We are also in the process of expanding to Twitter and Instagram. But as media professionals know, social media is a beast to deal with in and of itself. And so I just haven't had the capacity to do that, but we did have a volunteer step up who's willing to help us do Twitter and Instagram for us.
Awesome.
So we're going to take advantage of that and grow out that way.
Awesome.
We do also have a newsletter that I try to put out every week or so. I'm going to put a form up on our website that you can sign up for that.
Okay.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome. So we have 2 questions that we ask every guest on the podcast. So, you know, both very, very hard hitting. One more than the other. So for you, if you had to pick one last Kokomo meal that you could ever have.
Oh, God.
One last one. What would it be?
Oscar's white pizza.
Yes.
It is so good.
Okay. Clarifying question. Do you add basil?
I thought it came with basil.
Okay. Next question. Do you add hot honey? That takes it over
No.
the top. Austin. Okay.
I didn't know it was a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometime when you're back from vacation, lunch, Oscar's white pizza, add basil, add hot honey.
Will, we have to go to. Will's, that's his favorite. My fiance.
Yeah.
That's his favorite thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're invited to.
Yeah. Yes.
I am originally from New York. I like to talk about it a lot. And so I'm a pizza snob, and Oscar's white pizza is my very favorite.
Oh, it's so good.
White pizza.
It is so good.
Anywhere.
Great answer.
Great answer. Good answer. Okay. And last would be for you, what does a stronger, better Kokomo look like?
More inclusion. There is so much diversity in the background in Kokomo. But when you look at the limelight, most of the time you're seeing straight, cisgender, white men. But there already is so much diversity in town. We need to work on building that up. Currently, there is only, that I know of, only one LGBTQ plus identifying person anywhere in City Hall. Anywhere. And he sits on the Human Rights Commission. Council, not commission, excuse me. I can't think of anyone who's not white on city council. I could be wrong. That's not a place that I pay too much attention to, but that's just kind of my point, is bring out that diversity and show it without tokenizing. Don't say, look, we got one gay.
Yeah.
We're good. We've got our token gay. Look at him. We're good. Don't do that, but actually make it a really important part of your HR practices or of your business practices, and people will notice.
It's great.
Awesome. Austin, I can't thank you enough for coming and being part of this conversation, for helping us relaunch the podcast in the way that you have. But I think there's so much goodness and richness in what we're talking about and in what you guys are doing to continue to grow Kokomo, to make us better, to make this community just the place that we want to live in. Pam, anything else you want to say?
Yeah, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of, in a non-cliche way, making positivity louder.
Yeah.
We love Kokomo. We're so glad you're a part of Kokomo. And thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having us. So I also want to make one announcement. I literally just got an email from the mayor. He will officially be declaring June 28th as Kokomo's LGBTQ plus Pride Day.
What?
As in a proclamation. So this coming Monday. I think that's Monday or Tuesday.
That is Monday.
That is Monday, June 28th.
And he'll post a video and make a proclamation declaring Kokomo, or June 28th, the anniversary of the start of the Stonewall uprising, as Kokomo's LGBTQ plus Pride Day.
Congratulations.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
That
we're
is awesome.
really excited about that.
Man, what a way to end this.
Yeah. I want to get you out of here so we can do a toast or something. Wow.
Austin, thank you so much. For those of you guys who are joining us and tuning in, thank you guys so much. And we will see you on the next episode of the Kokomo Post Podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys.